your presentation. My question, my comment is, why do we need a constitution? Let's look at the history of Fiji. We have had so many constitutions, right? So I know that we had a post-independent constitution that was 1966, and then we had constitutions 1970, 1990, 1997, and then 2013. So my question is, why do we need a constitution? We look at countries from around the world. There's several countries that don't have constitutions, right? So one of them is our neighbors, New Zealand. And then we have Canada, the United Kingdom, and Israel. And Professor Regan, you have mentioned in your presentation that there was a time in our history, in Fiji, that we didn't have a constitution, but the country was still being run as it was. Right? So you have given us options of how we can amend the Constitution. I'm not thinking about amending the Constitution, replacing the Constitution, and replacing it lawfully. So how can that be done? Right? So now we have a parliament which might be conducive to having statutes or statute that could allow for replacing the Constitution. Right? So the Parliament can pass statutes to replace the Constitution. So we don't need to go and get around amending it. We don't need to get the 2/3 within Parliament or 2/3 of the population that had registered to vote. So I just want to get your thoughts on that, whether that is possible within where our Parliament is right now, the situation that we are in terms of our legislature at this point in time.
Thank you for the question. Over to you.
Okay. I completely disagree with you in saying that England and New Zealand don't have constitutions. They do. They're unwritten constitutions. The distinction that's made is between written constitutions and unwritten constitutions. Most countries in the world have written constitutions. A few have unwritten and a few have a sort of mixture. Israel and Germany have a sort of mixture. The main reason why people have written constitutions is to provide a degree of certainty on the most controversial matters. Hence this idea of a degree of rigidity of constitutions. That in divided societies, and most societies are divided in one way or another, when you make rules about how power is distributed, how resources are distributed, they can be very controversial and contested. So if you have a good process that ensures all interests are taken into account as much as possible, and you come up with compromises on those sorts of issues, constitutions then preserve those agreed arrangements from attack and from undermining. You don't want to make it too rigid, because then we get into the problems that you're talking about. If you make it so rigid that it can't be changed. When you say that I'm only talking about amendment, I'm afraid I probably haven't explained myself properly. I think you do need a wholesale change of the Constitution, but you've got to do it in ways that would work. If, for example, it's decided to go down the path of getting a vote in Parliament and changing the electoral system and trying to go for the 3/4 absolute majority vote as required by Section 160, once that's gone, you can do wholesale amendment or partial amendment. You've got all the options on the table. For each of the options I've mentioned, there's various outcomes. Some of them would involve the possibility of total change immediately, others would involve partial change immediately that then would give the opportunity for more wholesale change. And what I've talked about, I've tried to make clear at the very beginning, when you get to that stage of making choices about what you do once the options are open, then you've got to really think about having a good process so that the choices that are made about the longer term are better. So I wouldn't advocate doing everything by statute, because then depending on what government comes to power, they can make wholesale changes to everything. So the advantage of a constitution is that it protects the hard-won compromises on the essential things about how you organise your society.